So, a couple of years ago, December 2019, I did a title tier list where I ranked all of the titles in terms of how difficult they were in a couple of different ways and by how cool the title itself actually was. Just a fun little thing that I wanted to do, but man, you guys have really wanted an update to that, so I am here to provide, I guess. I'll be judging the titles on the same criteria that I did last time. We're going to have 3 lists. My personal list getting the titles, so no rules or anything like that. Then we have the sort of community ruling where we use a list of criteria, and then the cool factor list, which I will go over. For the community ruling list, which isn't a great title, but I can't really think of anything else to call it, we had a list of criteria last time that I will abide by again. That criteria is listed in the description. I will spare you a minute of me reading that. You can just go read it yourself, but it's the same thing as last time. Also, we'll talk about gilded titles at the end. So, we've gotten a big shakeup since the last time we've done this in terms of triumphs and titles. You can now gild titles, aka get them multiple times, and several titles are no longer earnable. The titles that you cannot get anymore are Chronicler, Wayfarer, all seasonal titles before Season 12, so that's Blacksmith, Reckoner, Shadow, Undying, Savior, Almighty, Forerunner, and then the 2 Moments of Triumph titles, MMXIX and MMXX. I mostly leave these in the same places as my opinion on them didn't really change at all, although there are a couple of shifts as a result of new titles and new activities. New titles include the following: Warden, Chosen, Splicer, and Realm Walker as the seasonal triumphs, Splintered from Beyond Light, Descendant from Deepstone Crypt, Fatebreaker from Vault of Glass, Deadeye from, I don't know, Bungie just wanted that I guess, Flawless for Trials, and Conqueror for GM Nightfalls. Here are our old lists, both my personal experience getting them and then our criteria-driven one. We were pretty close when it came to ranking the titles, with mainly Reckoner being the only big difference due to the mental anguish I had to endure to get the title. Otherwise, everything was basically within one tier of each other. Because it's been a couple of years, I also want to see the percentages of people who have certain titles. Last time I was able to gather information from both light.gg and bray.tech, but this time we're going to be using Charlemagne data from warmind.io/analytics/seal because they really lay it out nice and simple. Warmind.io uses 2 different stats, global rarity and adjusted rarity. Global rarity includes literally every single guardian that can be found in the game's data, whereas adjusted rarity is used for every single guardian that has at least 1 title. In terms of global rarity, if you have the Dredgen title, you're in the top 1.5% of all guardians who have ever been registered, but when adjusted among all guardians with at least 1 title, well, that number now goes up to 58.2% as of me writing this sentence. We'll be using adjusted rarity. But because I used BrayTech last time, I wanted to compare numbers on BrayTech from now versus December 2019. Riven's Bane went from 2.41% to about 6%. Cursebreaker essentially doubled 8 to 16%. Enlightened and Harbinger were very new at the time and both went up about the same percentage here. Chronicler basically doubled up, 3.5% to 6.8%. Dredgen did more than double, 15% up to 33.5%. Wayfarer almost doubled, 11 up to 20%. Unbroken followed similar numbers to Enlightened, going from 0.82 to 6.9%. Blacksmith went up from about 1.5 to 5.51%. Reckoner went from just over 1% to just under 4%. Shadow went from 1.5 to 6.21%. MMXIX had a tracking issue, so I'm not going to include that one. Undying went from 5.5 up to 8.63%. The reason for the discrepancy compared to Warmind.io is, I guess, just how their tracking data works. Okay, so now we're going to use warmind.io for our data. The most common seal is still Dredgen with a commanding lead of 58.2% adjusted rarity. Coming as a complete non-surprise, a lot of these seasonal titles are the next most common. Splicer is actually the second most common at 31.4%. Forerunner's at 24%, Chosen's at 23.7%, and Warden is at 22.4%. Wayfarer is at 25.1% for reference. Under 20% now, MMXX is at 19.1%. Then we have Savior, seasonal title, at 18.3%. Cursebreaker is at 16.6%, still earnable, along with Descendant for Deepstone Crypt at 13%. Almighty is the second rarest seasonal title since the launch of the new seasonal content cadence that started with Shadowkeep at 12.1%, Undying being the rarest at 10.4%. MMXIX is at 10.9%, Splintered, which is the Beyond Light title, at 9.5%. Moving into the single digits, Unbroken is at 7.8%, Chronicler is at 6.2%, likely due to its retirement status. Enlightened is a mere 5.4%, with Harbinger even less common at 5.2%. Under 5%, we have Riven's Bane at 4.9%, which is still earnable. And finally, we have Shadow at 4.7%, Blacksmith at 4.1%, and Reckoner at 3.2%. There is only one thing more rare than Reckoner, and that is Fatebreaker, but it's really close at 2.9%. However, Reckoner is no longer earnable, so I suspect it'll go back to being the rarest non-gilded title in the game sometime this season. Current titles are Deadeye at 11%, Realm Walker is obviously at 0 because you can't get it yet. Then we have Flawless and Conqueror, which are a little wonky. I think it's tracking the total number of those titles across all seasons, because you can't get Conqueror in Season 15 yet, and it says 16.1%, and Flawless is at 3.6%. Flawless Season 10 is at 2.7, Season 11 is at 2.0, and Season 12 is a mere 0.8%. Conqueror Season 10 is 3.0%, Season 11 is 2.3, and Season 12 is 2.6. With people being able to earn these seals at any point, it kind of throws things out of whack. I would really love to know how many people have, Conqueror X1, X2, Flawless X2, X3, etc., etc. Next, we're going to do Gilded really quick. Gilded Deadeye is the rarest at 1.7%. It's brand new, so expect that to skyrocket. Flawless is at 2.3%. Unbroken is at 8.8%. Conqueror is at 12.1%. And Dredgen is pushing 20%. So, now that we got all that data out of the way, let's start the grading process. In the S++ tier, it had to have been Flawless at the time of release, which was March 2020. Trials nowadays has gotten much better, both in terms of being able to go Flawless and the rewards themselves, and this also includes the title. There aren't a ton of triumphs needed to even get the title in the first place, but one of those is to go on a Flawless Confidence card. For the majority of the population at the time, this was a tall task, especially with the cheaters, hackers, win traders, account sharers. It's something that I personally have yet to bother even attempting, although I may try this season because it'll be much more feasible. In the S tier is going to be Fatebreaker at release. Most of Fatebreaker's challenge comes from the fact that you need to do a Master Mode VOG and all of its challenges. Master Mode VOG at 15 levels under, which is where I think you should be doing it, is no small feat, and many people have struggled with this. The average player is not likely to ever out-level Master VOG, making this challenge basically permanent. However, a tough question to maybe answer is, what's harder, a Flawless Last Wish or a Master VOG for the average player? Last Wish has very easy combat, but it has a lot of fights and a potentially lethal platforming section, whereas Master Vault has very difficult combat, but you can wipe all you want. My community voted that a Flawless Last Wish is harder than a Master VOG, which means that Fatebreaker needs to be below Riven's Bane. Without a Flawless Last Wish, you are not a Riven's Bane. Without a Master VOG and all of its challenges, you're not a Fatebreaker. Enlightened stays in the S tier because of its Flawless Raid requirement. My community determined that Flawless Last Wish is harder than Master VOG which is harder than Flawless Scourge, but that still leaves Crown and Garden Flawless in the middle, and I just didn't bother to pull every single Flawless raid, although we did determine last video that Garden was the second easiest Flawless raid. Shadow is staying in the S+ tier thanks to its Flawless requirements on top of its Flawless Menagerie requirements. If you wanted to bring either one of those down a tier, I think that would totally be fine. In the new A+ tier, we have Conqueror. My community voted that GM Nightfalls are more difficult than a normal raid clear, but are easier than Flawless raids and Master VOG. We are also assuming that, on average, you will have to do one of the hardest GM Nightfalls the game has to offer, because without doing all of them, you're not a Conqueror. Obviously, it varies from season to season, as some have been easier than others. In the new B+ tier, we have Descendant. To my disappointment, Bungie went soft and did not require a Flawless raid for this title. Considering how easy this raid was and still is, this is the absolute highest I can give it. Just below this are the Moments of Triumph titles, which require you to do raids, but a raid clear with a raid challenge encounter is harder than a raid clear without one, even in the case of Deepstone Crypt. You don't have to do the whole raid to do the challenge, I get it, but, you know, still. The B tier will get the other Moments of Triumph title, and I'm just going to say the 2021 title as well, for reasons that I hope are obvious. They are more or less the same thing. I know one of them required ritual weapons at a time where they were harder to get than they are right now, but I'm still just going to group them all up here. I'm also going to place Splintered here. The only other title we have to compare to really is Harbinger from Shadowkeep, maybe Cursebreaker. Harbinger is in the A tier because of needing to do a solo Pit of Heresy and having to do Master Nightmare hunts and time trials. The most difficult thing in Splintered is a Master Empire hunt and a Master Solo Lost Sector. Is a Master Solo Lost Sector harder than a solo Pit of Heresy? According to my chat, it is not. I didn't want to place this in the C tier with Cursebreaker because it's definitely harder than that. Same with all the seasonal titles. In the C tier, I am placing all of the seasonal titles. Seasonal titles are simply grocery lists of things to go do to make sure you've done all the things that a season has to offer, and are some of the most common titles in the game after Season 8. In the D tier is Deadeye. If you expected this to be any higher, I really don't know what to tell you. The entire title is just based on killing things. While the PvP requirements might hold some people up, I'm still going to place it here as the average player is likely to have ventured into PvP at some point. So here's our updated list with all of the new titles. Like last time, I'm now also going to give my own anecdotal list in getting these titles, with RNG, time commitment, and grind all applying. I'm just going to do the new titles, see my first video for my thoughts on the older ones. For me, Flawless is going above Fatebreaker simply because I haven't bothered to do it, nor did I want to bother to do it back when it first came out. Could I have just grouped up with some Omega gamers and been carried to this title back in March 2020? Sure. Did I want to do that? No, I wanted it to feel somewhat earned, unlike my Unbroken title. Nowadays, this feels considerably more within reach, to the point where if I got some lucky matchmaking, I could get this done solo. I would probably put it around the A tier now. That pales in comparison to what it was like when it first came out and the following seasons before Trials was revamped recently. That being said, it's still going to go up there with Reckoner because even though I didn't want to do that one either, I am arrogant and it was actually possible for me to do. It was just really painful. Fatebreaker is something that I actually wanted to do and was still pretty tough, although not something that took a very long time to do. I did most of these challenges with my World First squad, and we got them done relatively easily. I would definitely put it on par with something like Ravensbane or Shadow in the S tier. Difficult, but not something I struggled a huge amount with, especially considering the challenges were the same as the World First race, in which I was an even lower power level. Conqueror is a tough one to place, but I think I pretty much agree on where it is placed within the criteria-based list in the newly formed A+ tier, maybe A tier for me personally. The question of is a normal raid harder or a GM harder is gonna vary depending on who you ask and what they consider to be difficult. It's completely subjective, Me personally, I think a GM is harder because I have a very good understanding of mechanics and raids, and when you have a good understanding of mechanics and raids, the combat portion is just a complete joke in a normal raid. Whereas in a GM Nightfall, I still die and I still wipe, even when playing somewhat seriously. If my team really needs to get into gamer mode in a raid, we're probably not going to wipe, regardless of which of the squads I normally play with are in my team. Whereas in GM Nightfalls, it can still happen. Descendant, I guess, is going to go in the B tier with the seasonal titles, MMXIX and Enlightened, unless I made another tier, like a C+ tier. The challenges were not very hard to do at all. There's no flawless raid requirement. It was only hard because it was time-gated. Seasonal titles should probably be knocked down a peg. I put them in B tier with MMXIX and Enlightened last time. I think I want to punch those down a tier. So B is going to be MMXIX, XX, Enlightened, and Descendant, and Seasonals are going to be C tier. That's going to push Wayfarer, Chronicler, and Cursebreaker down into D tier. Might as well just group them with Dredgen, why not? Cursebreaker maybe belongs in like a C+ tier, but oh well. Splintered is going with the seasonal titles because it is more or less a seasonal title, except tied to an expansion. I don't even have Splintered because I haven't bothered to go grind out collectibles and do all those fallen brig kills in a fire team. I just don't want to, but I'll go do it soon. Deadeye, dare I say, is below Dredgen. I had this thing basically done when it launched. Throw that into the smile tier. Finally, to cap it off, we have the cool factor rankings. Which name sounds the coolest to have? That's the only criteria, the coolest word to have by your name. Now, I'm not sure how many people really abided by those rules. I'm more than willing to bet that people chose their favorites, or their definition of cool was different compared to what I was envisioning the definition to be, or maybe they were just picking the rarest. But all that being said, here are the results. I split this into two. I did my chat first, and then I opened it up to people on Twitter. People were allowed to pick up to 4 titles. The least voted titles from my chat were any MM title with only 2 votes, followed by Splintered, Warden, Splicer, and Wayfarer. The top voted was Shadow, again, with about 12% of the vote, and Fatebreaker only 6 votes behind. Realm Walker was actually 3rd place, followed by Conqueror and Rivensbane. But when I opened the poll to Twitter, Fatebreaker overtook Shadow as the coolest title. Realm Walker, Conqueror, and Rivensbane all stayed in their places. The biggest jump compared to my chat was Unbroken, moving up 3 spots right behind Cursebreaker, which is in 6th place. That was the only title that moved more than 2 places. Anything else that shifted was only 1 or 2 spots, so the data from my chat really wasn't that far off compared to when I opened it up to Twitter. In terms of surprises, I was initially surprised that Realm Walker and Fatebreaker were so high up, but when the only criteria is how cool the word is, I guess it makes sense. You know, they're cool words. Now, in terms of gilded titles and how difficult it is to gild them currently, Dredgen's 50 wins on the criteria-based list doesn't really move, but on my personal list, I would move it up a tier or 2 because that's a minimum of 50 Gambit matches. I don't want to do that. Flawless is definitely no longer S++. I'm dropping that down to around an A tier nowadays, scaling up as the population dies down. Unbroken gilding doesn't really take too much. The most difficult thing is the glory win streak, and that can be done at any rank. Probably put that in the B tier. Deadeye gilding is going to be in the smile tier. There's nothing hard about killing enemies with guns at all. Conqueror I would probably keep in the same spot permanently because the gilding process involves basically doing the same requirements as getting the title in the first place. That is your updated tier list for titles. I did not think I was going to be making a follow-up to this, but you know, here we are. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.